The 26th of October 1942, Santa Cruz Islands, South Pacific. The USS Hornet is dying. She burns from bow to stern. A 20,000-ton funeral pyre adrift on a sunlit sea. Japanese dive bombers have torn her apart. Below decks, sailors choke on smoke and salt water, fighting a battle they have already lost above. The last of her aircraft circle like abandoned children, their fuel gauges dipping towards empty. There is nowhere for them to land. The nearest friendly carrier is over the horizon, fleeing a sky still thick with enemy Zeros. A desperate voice crackles over the radio from a Wildcat pilot. Hornet, I am bingo fuel. Request immediate landing instructions. There is only static in reply. The pilot's choices are to ditch in a shark-filled ocean or attempt the impossible on a flight deck, now twisted into steel claws. This moment crystallizes the United States Navy's most profound vulnerability in the Pacific. Its fleet carriers, the queens of the chessboard, are terrifyingly fragile. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. To send them within range of land-based Japanese bombers is to risk national strategic catastrophe. Yet without them, invasion forces are left naked and bleeding on distant shores, just as the Marines were at Tarawa. The math is merciless. You cannot project air power across thousands of miles of ocean without risking everything you have. Victory by every known rule of naval warfare requires a fortress that does not sink, a runway that cannot be torpedoed, an airfield that moves. The problem is not theoretical. It is written in the casualty reports piling up on Admiral Ernest King's desk in Washington. Amphibious assault is a calculated slaughter. The mathematics are simple and brutal. Men in landing craft must cross hundreds of yards of open water fully exposed against an enemy who has spent months fortifying his position. Without continuous, immediate, and overwhelming air cover fighters strafing the beach, the moment the ramps drop, the first wave is little more than target practice. The fleet carriers are the only source of that cover, but they represent a risk too great to bear. Lose a carrier, and you lose the campaign. Lose the Marines on the beach, and you lose the battle. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. A paradox emerges, one that threatens to stall the entire Pacific advance. The weapon you need to ensure victory is too valuable to use. In the quiet, drafting rooms of the Bureau of Ships, a different kind of officer studies the problem. They are not tacticians dreaming of grand maneuvers. They are engineers. They see the war not as a sequence of battles, but as a series of physical equations: force, displacement, momentum, stress. Their gaze falls away from the prized fleet carriers. It settles instead on the unglamorous, ubiquitous workhorses of the merchant marine, the cargo ship. A slow, ungainly, and expendable hull. What if they propose? You could graft a flight deck onto that hull. What if you could create an aircraft carrier not from keel up, but from a conversion? A vessel built not for fleet combat, but for one brutal specific purpose: to get fighter aircraft within a few dozen miles of an invasion beach and keep them there. The idea is met with immediate and profound skepticism. Senior naval aviators scoff. A flight deck on a merchant hull. It would be too short. The stability would be catastrophic in a seaway. The speed would be too slow for aircraft to take off with a meaningful payload. It is, they declare, a technical absurdity, a death trap for pilots. The engineers hear the objections, they nod, and they begin to draw. The British provide the spark. In September 1941, before America is even at war, the Royal Navy demonstrates a crude prototype. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The HMS Audacity, a converted German cargo ship with a flight deck bolted onto her hull. She carries only a handful of aircraft, but her mere existence proves the concept is not pure fantasy. She is a proof of principle written in steel. American observers take furious notes. But the U.S. problem is of a different scale. The Pacific is not the Atlantic. Distances are measured in continents, not coastlines. The need is not for anti-submarine patrols, but for launching and recovering high-performance fighter and bomber aircraft to support major amphibious landings. The British solution is a pea shooter. America needs a howitzer. Two parallel, desperate conversion programs are launched under a cloak of secrecy and urgency. The first takes a Cleveland class light cruiser hull and transforms it into the Independence class. It is a warship, fast and tough, but its deck is narrow, its hangar cramped. It is a compromise, born of scarce shipyard space and time. But the second program is the radical one. Codenamed and classified, it targets the most common hull in the world, the Sea Fay-type cargo ship. The plan is insane: slice off the superstructure, build a flight deck from scratch over the entire length of the ship, and create a miniature, functional aircraft carrier from a slow merchantman. Naval traditionalists are aghast. They privately call the concept coffin ships. Yet, in the shipyards of Tacoma, Newport News, and Chester, the first of these hybrids takes shape. She is designated CVE, carrier, vessel, escort. The press will later call them Jeep carriers. But to the men who will crew them, a darker, more accurate name will emerge: combustible, vulnerable, expendable. The first of these strange new ships, the USS Long Island, slides into the water in Fay, a bizarre silhouette against the sky. She is an awkward chimera, a blunt-nosed freighter with a flat top. Her trials are a symphony of potential disaster. Pilots approach her short, slow deck with pure terror. Wind currents over her boxy hull are unpredictable and violent. Her top speed of 16 knots is a crawl. A conventional carrier makes 30. To land on her feels like threading a needle during an earthquake. But she floats, and aircraft against all expectation can operate from her. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The breakthrough is not elegance, but economics and volume. While a fleet carrier like the Essex class takes over 2 years to build and requires specialized yards and scarce materials, a CVE can be built in a few months on a merchant slipway. The strategy becomes one of overwhelming industrialized pragmatism. America will not build one perfect sword. It will forge 50 serviceable daggers. The doctrine crystallizes around the core: shocking purpose, surprise Japanese garrisons. The Imperial Japanese military code is rigid. It believes in fixed defenses, central strongpoints, and the decisive fleet battle. Their intelligence expects attacks to be preceded by the arrival of the large, recognizable fleet, carriers the Enterprise. The Saratoga, the appearance of those ships on the horizon, is the trigger to alert every garrison for 1,000 miles. But what if the air cover arrives silently from a different direction, on ships that look like slow, moving merchant convoys? What if, just before dawn on D-Day, not from a distant horizon but from just offshore, a swarm of fighter aircraft appears where the Japanese tactical manuals insist they cannot possibly be? The CVE is designed to be the wolf in sheep's hull, to sail into the blind spot of an entire military doctrine. The 8th of November 1942. Operation Torch, North Africa. The theory faces its first, brutal test. The USS Chenango, a converted oiler, and the USS Sangamon, a converted fleet oiler, sail with the invasion fleet to North Africa. They are not facing Japan, but the combat environment is real. The stakes are the entire Allied landing. The weather is atrocious. Green water sweeps over the short flight decks of the CVEs. The ships pitch and roll in the long Atlantic swell. On the Sangamon, a Wildcat fighter, caught in a sudden downdraft as the ship's stern rises, slams into the deck, its landing gear collapsing, and skids in a shower of sparks toward the edge. Deck crews, lashed by wind and spray, dive to secure it before it plunges into the sea. By the cold metrics of engineering, the ships are a marginal success. Aircraft do get airborne, they do provide cover, but the cost in lost aircraft and battered aircrews is high. The reports that filter back to Washington are laced with a deep professional concern. In the Pacific, the seas are different, but the enemy is infinitely more lethal. Can these floating airfields survive, not just the ocean, but the concentrated fury of the Imperial Japanese Navy and its land-based air forces? The doubt hardens into a consensus among the battleship admirals and carrier elite. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The CVEs are a stopgap, useful only for secondary theaters, for ferrying aircraft, for anti-submarine duty in backwaters. To pit them against the heart of the Japanese Empire would be criminal negligence. They are, in the final calculation, expendable in every sense, including the lives of their crews. But in the Pacific, a different kind of admiral is studying the maps. His name is Richmond Kelly Turner, commander of amphibious forces. He reads the same casualty reports from Tarawa. He sees the same paradox, and he begins to draft a plan that will use these expendable ships, not as auxiliaries, but as the spearhead. August 1943, the strategic calculus shifts irrevocably. The United States now holds Guadalcanal, but the path to Japan is a gauntlet of fortified atolls and mountainous islands. Each is a miniature fortress, with airfields that project Japanese power hundreds of miles out to sea. To land on one, you must first blind it. The fleet carriers cannot do it. They are too precious to loiter within range of these island airfields for the days or weeks required to systematically dismantle them. The solution, Admiral Turner argues, must be persistent, localized, and cheap. Group, not built around a handful of magnificent fleet carriers, but around a swarm of these escort carriers. They will operate in teams, a Jeep carrier task force, sailing just beyond the reefs. Their mission is surgical and ruthless. Provide round-the-clock combat air patrol over the beachhead. Conduct pinpoint strikes on pillboxes and gun emplacements, and smash any attempt by the Japanese to reinforce or counterattack by air or sea. They will be the permanent, unblinking eye and the relentless, close-range fist. To the Japanese garrison commander on an island like Makin or Tarawa, the tactical reality has been clear for years. Once the American fleet carriers exhaust their sorties and withdraw to safer waters, his fortifications can survive and his reinforcements can arrive. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. This is the rhythm of the war he understands. Turner's plan seeks to break that rhythm forever. It proposes a heresy, air supremacy generated not by the elite, but by the common. A curtain of steel woven, not by a few master swordsmiths, but by an arsenal of workshops. The first major operation to test this doctrine is already on the boards. Its target is a place no one has heard of, the Gilbert Islands. For the men of the new CVE squadrons, it will not be a test, it will be a furnace. The 20th of November, 1943, day Tarawa, dawn bleeds over Betio Island. The naval bombardment, the most intense in history to that point, lifts. As the echoes fade, a new sound emerges not from the distant horizon, but from just offshore. It is the deep, throaty roar of radial engines at low altitude. From the decks of the escort carriers USS Sangamon, Suwannee, Chenango, and Barnes, squadrons of FM-2 Wildcats and TBF Avengers have launched in the pre-dawn dark. They do not come from the direction of the mighty Essex-class carriers, which are over 100 miles away. They rise from what appeared, minutes before, to be a mere line of support ships. For the Japanese defenders, peering from their steel, reinforced coconut log bunkers, this is a profound cognitive shock. Their intelligence predicted the carrier threat would come from the deep ocean. Their artillery is ranged on those expected approaches. Yet here are American fighters, materializing almost from the surf itself, already strafing the beachline before the first landing craft has even touched the reef. The tactical advantage is immediate and overwhelming. A Wildcat pilot from the Sangamon, flying just 50 feet above the lagoon, spots a machine gun nest his ships. Guns missed. He banks, dives, and silences it with a long burst of .50 caliber fire, saving an entire Higgins boat from annihilation. This is the doctrine made real, persistent, intimate, and devastatingly responsive air support. But the Japanese are not fools. They are masters of adaptation. As the morning unfolds, they identify the new threat. These flat tops are not staying far out at sea. They are hovering, close, and vulnerable, and they begin to redirect their most lethal weapon not at the beaches but at the sea. The weapon is the Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, based on distant airfields in the Marshalls. It carries either a massive 1,800-pound bomb or, more terrifyingly, a Type 91 aerial torpedo. Its doctrine is to sink capital ships. Now it finds a new, softer target. The CVE Task Force, designated Task Group 52.3, is operating under a fundamental, unchangeable constraint. It must stay within a tight box to keep its aircraft over Tarawa. It cannot run. It cannot hide. It is, by design, a stationary target. The first wave of Bettys comes in low, skimming the wave tops just after noon. Aboard the USS Suwannee, radar picks up the blips too late. The combat air patrol Wildcats, low on fuel and ammunition from hours over the beach, are caught out of position. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Claxons wail. 5-inch guns on the CVEs begin to fire, throwing up a desperate, sparse black cloud of flak. A Betty, trailing smoke, ignores the screening destroyers. Its pilot has one objective. He lines up on the Suwannee, a silhouette impossible to miss. At 800 yards, he releases his torpedo. A white streak of compressed air bubbles snakes through the water directly at the carrier's midsection. On the bridge, Captain John H. Cassidy gives the only order he can. Hard right rudder, all ahead flank. The old oiler hull strains agonizingly slow to respond. The torpedo closes the distance. History, in this moment insists that the first major experiment of the Jeep carrier doctrine should end here in a catastrophic fireball. Proving the doubters right, the torpedo misses the Sudanese stern by less than 20 yards. It is not skill, but the inherent instability of the aerial torpedo and a last-second gust of wind that saves the ship. The reprieve is temporary, and it is not a victory. It is a warning written in the sea itself. The Japanese now know exactly what the strange, slow carriers are and where they must be. The element of operational surprise is gone. For the next 72 hours, the CVE task force endures a relentless siege. It becomes a floating fortress under continuous air attack. Pilots fly mission after mission over Tarawa, land on bucking decks to rearm and refuel in minutes, and are catapulted back into the fight. Fatigue becomes a tangible enemy as dangerous as Zero fighters. Deck crews work in a haze of exhaustion, handling live bombs and torpedoes on a deck slick with oil and seawater, aware that a single mistake could immolate the entire ship. Meanwhile, on Betio, the Marines are locked in a battle of inches. The pre-invasion bombardment has failed to destroy the deepest bunkers. Every Japanese strongpoint must be reduced by flame, explosive, and point-blank courage. From above, CVE-based Avengers become precision demolition tools, dropping 500-pound bombs on coordinates radioed by desperate forward observers on the ground. The coordination is crude, terrifying, and vital. It is the first real-world test of the integrated floating airfield concept under fire. The cost is written in blood on the beach and in metal in the sky. American aircraft losses are heavy. But the critical metric is this: the air cover over the beachhead never falters. Not for a single hour. The Japanese garrison on Betio is completely isolated, cut off from reinforcement or resupply from the air or sea. Its fate is sealed not by the distant fleet, but by the persistent, grinding presence of the ships it was never supposed to fear. The 23rd of November, 1943. Betio is declared secure. The cost is apocalyptic, nearly 1,000 Marines dead. Over 2,000 wounded for 2 square miles of coral. In the aftermath, a fierce and bitter debate erupts within the U.S. command. Traditionalists point to the Butcher's Bill as proof that the pre-landing bombardment and, by extension, the air support was insufficient. The CVEs, they argue, lacked the punch of heavy bombers and the staying power of real carriers. But Admiral Turner and his proponents see a different ledger. Without the CVEs, they contend, the casualty count would have been triple. The Japanese had over 5,000 defenders. Only 17 survived as prisoners. The garrison was not just defeated, it was annihilated, and the CVEs ensured no relief could reach them. The battle proved the ships could take punishment and sustain operations under constant threat. The real lesson of Tarawa is one of ruthless evolution. The floating airfield is not a perfect weapon. It is a necessary one. Its value is not in its individual strength, but in its presence. The U.S. Navy now possesses a tool that can project tactical air power into places and timelines previously considered impossible. The next target in the island hopping march is the Marshall Islands, a stronger, more dispersed bastion for the CVE crews. There is no respite. The shipyards are already converting more merchant hulls. The strategy is no longer an experiment, it is an assembly line. The United States is not just building a navy, it is engineering a new form of warfare based on expendable infrastructure. For the Japanese, the implications are only beginning to dawn. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Their intelligence on Tarawa reports a confusing profusion of small carriers. The pattern does not fit their models. They are still searching for the decisive fleet battle. They do not yet understand that the battle has changed. The enemy's center of gravity is no longer a handful of precious flat tops. It is a swarm. The 31st of January, 1944, Kwajalein Atoll, Marshall Islands. The lessons of Tarawa are applied with cold, mechanical precision. The bombardment is longer, heavier, more scientific. And the escort carriers are no longer a supporting element. They are the cornerstone of the air plan. Over a dozen CVEs encircle the atoll, their aircraft maintaining an airtight dome over the invasion beaches. They have honed their tactics. Dedicated Heckler squadrons fly all night, dropping flares and light bombs to shatter Japanese rest. While fighter sweeps clear the sky at dawn, the Japanese garrison is better prepared, yet more psychologically isolated. They witness a new, unnerving phenomenon, American air power that does not diminish. For days before the landing and for weeks after, the relentless drone of aircraft from the CVE squadrons is a constant. There is no respite, no window for reinforcement. No moment when the sky belongs to Japan. The floating airfields have created a state of perpetual siege. The tactical impact is devastating. Japanese counterattacks are broken up before they form. Artillery positions are spotted and obliterated by Avengers carrying radio-guided bombs. The Marine and Army divisions ashore advance with the confidence born of knowing the sky above them is unequivocally theirs. The casualty ratio compared to Tarawa plummets. In the war rooms of Tokyo, a disturbing picture emerges from the Marshall Islands campaign. American naval power is not behaving according to doctrine. It is not concentrating its carrier strength for a climactic duel. Instead, it is dispersing it, creating multiple, persistent, localized points of overwhelming air superiority. This defies the core Japanese strategic principle of Kantai Kessen, the decisive battle. You cannot decisively engage an enemy who refuses to present a single, vital center. For the CVE crews, success brings no safety. They have proven their worth, which means they will be sent into even more dangerous waters. Their next destination is not an atoll, but a vast, mountainous island fortress, Saipan. And waiting for them there is not just land-based air, but the entire surviving strength of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The 15th of June, 1944. Off the coast of Saipan. The invasion of the Marianas is the masterstroke. It places American forces within B-29 range of the Japanese home islands. Tokyo understands the existential threat for the first time since Midway. The combined fleet sorties in full strength. Its aim to annihilate the U.S. Fifth Fleet in the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The Fast Carrier Task Force moves to intercept this Grand Armada. And here, the escort carriers are given their most critical and most vulnerable assignment. They are left behind. Task Force Faye, the fast carriers, steams west to meet the Japanese. Task Force Faye, the invasion force with its screen of CVEs, is ordered to hold station east of Saipan. Their job remains unchanged, provide continuous close air support for the troops fighting ashore. But they are now alone. Stripped of the protection of the fleet's battleships, cruisers, and most importantly, the combat air patrol of the fast carriers. They are a static, exposed flock. Admiral Raymond Spruance's decision is a calculated gamble of staggering proportions. He is betting the survival of the entire amphibious operation and the tens of thousands of men on Saipan on two things: that his fast carriers will defeat the Japanese fleet, and that his CVEs can defend themselves against anything that slips through. Aboard ships like the USS Fanshawe Bay and Gambier Bay, the atmosphere shifts from focused routine to a coiled, quiet dread. They are bait. They are the anvil. If the Japanese break through, the combustible, vulnerable, expendable ships will be the first to die. On June 5th, the great carrier battle is joined far to the west. The radio circuits chatter with distant victory. Hundreds of Japanese aircraft are being blown from the sky. But on the radar scopes of the CVE screen, a new, smaller, and more immediate threat emerges. A group of unidentified contacts is approaching from the southwest, not from the direction of the main battle. They are not carrier aircraft. They are land-based bombers and torpedo planes, launched from Japanese airfields on Guam and Yap. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more. They have found the undefended underbelly of the American operation. The attack on Task Force 52, later known as the Mission Beyond Darkness, is a frantic, close-range brawl that proves the ultimate mettle of the CVE concept. With their own limited combat air patrol heavily engaged, the escort carriers must rely on their organic defenses and the sheer courage of their pilots. Wildcat fighters, outclassed by Japanese Zeros in a dogfight, are forced to adopt brutal, head-on intercept tactics against incoming bombers. They fly directly into the formations, guns blazing, accepting the near certainty of a mid-air collision to break up the attack runs. On the decks of the CVEs, the scene is one of controlled chaos. Aircraft returning from support missions over Saipan are waved off, forced to circle dangerously low on fuel as the ships maneuver violently. 5-inch guns and rapid-fire 40mm Bofors mounts fill the air with steel. The sea around the task force erupts in geysers from near misses. The USS Kitcun Bay takes a bomb hit on her flight deck, but her damage control parties, trained for this specific nightmare, contain the fires. A torpedo bomber aims for the USS White Plains. A Wildcat pilot out of ammunition makes a feinting pass so aggressive the Japanese pilot jinks and drops his torpedo harmlessly off. Target: this is not the elegant, long-range warfare of the fleet carriers. This is a barroom fight. The CVEs, designed to be expendable, refuse to die. They weather the storm not through armor or speed, but through a combination of aggressive anti-aircraft fire, sacrificial fighter tactics, and the inherent difficulty of hitting a small, constantly turning target. The Japanese air attack is repulsed with heavy losses. Not a single CVE is sunk. More importantly, not a single transport or troop ship supporting the invasion is touched. The air support over the Marines on Saipan never skips a beat. In doing so, they accomplish the unthinkable. They protect the anvil upon which the Japanese fleet is about to be shattered. The aftermath of the Battle of the Philippine Sea is recorded as a historic victory for the fast carriers. But the silent, indispensable victory belongs to the floating airfields. They have done what no pre-war strategist thought possible. They have made close, persistent, and survivable naval air support a routine fact of warfare. From this point forward, the escort carrier swarm becomes the unchallenged template for every subsequent invasion. Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. At Iwo Jima, they will provide 60 of all close air support. At Okinawa, they will form a picket line against the kamikaze typhoon, absorbing blows that might have crippled the fleet carriers, sacrificing themselves so the larger strategy could continue. The Japanese garrison's psychological shock, first felt at Tarawa, becomes a universal constant. No island is beyond reach. No fortress is beyond isolation. The floating airfield erodes the very foundation of Japanese defensive doctrine, which was built on the assumption of temporary, distant American air superiority. The engineering premisito, build an expendable, mass-produced platform, proves to be a strategic masterstroke. By war's end, the United States will commission over 120 escort carriers. They will be called tomato cans and Kaiser coffins by their crews. With a mixture of fear and grim affection, they will suffer disproportionate losses, but their existence makes the island-hopping campaign a mathematical inevitability. They were never meant to win a fleet battle. They were designed to win a beachhead, then another, and another, until there were no beaches left to win. They turned the vast geography of the Pacific from an impregnable Japanese shield into an American highway, paved with steel decks and aircraft fueled by the understanding that some tools are meant not to be treasured, but to be used utterly and completely until the job is done. The story of these ships is not one of admiralty or individual heroism, though it contains both. It is the story of a logistical and engineering truth so powerful, it changed the face of battle, that supremacy can be built not just on quality, but on overwhelming, adaptable, and expendable quantity. The war in the Pacific was not won by a handful of legendary carriers. It was won by a swarm of them. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more.